In 1945, a brown-haired factory girl named Norma Jeane Baker walked into a Los Angeles beauty salon and asked them to make her platinum blonde. 3 hours later, she walked out as someone else entirely. The girl who entered that salon would never exist again. She'd been chemically erased, dissolved in peroxide and ammonia, replaced by something more valuable, more desirable, more marketable. Norma Jeane Baker died in that salon chair, and Marilyn Monroe was born, even though she wouldn't have that name for another year. This is the story of the most important transformation in Hollywood history, the moment a desperate teenager discovered she could kill her old identity and create a new one, and the devastating price of spending your entire life being someone you invented. It started with invisibility. Norma Jeane Baker was 19 years old in 1945, working at the Radio Plane Company factory in Burbank, inspecting parachutes and spraying airplane parts for the war effort. She was pretty, everyone said so, but pretty in a girl-next-door way that didn't translate to opportunities. Brown curly hair, natural look, the kind of pretty that gets you compliments but not careers. She'd been discovered by a military photographer named David Conover, who was shooting propaganda photos of women in defense plants. He'd been stunned by how she photographed, how the camera loved her in ways it didn't love other pretty girls. But when he showed the photos to modeling agencies, they all said the same thing. Great face, wrong hair. The modeling industry in 1945 had rules, and one of them was simple. Blondes photographed better. Blondes caught the light. Blondes stood out on magazine covers. Blondes looked glamorous in a way brunettes supposedly couldn't. It was arbitrary and probably untrue, but it was gospel in the fashion world. And Norma Jeane, desperate to escape the factory, desperate for a way out of working-class obscurity, desperate to be someone, heard that message loud and clear. If you want to succeed, you need to be blonde. She'd gone to the Blue Book modeling agency with David Conover's photos, hoping they'd sign her. The owner, Emmeline Snively, saw potential but also problems. The brown hair had to go. The natural look had to go. Everything that was authentically Norma Jeane had to be erased and replaced with something more commercially viable. Snively was blunt about it. Blondes make more money. If you want to work, you need to bleach your hair. It wasn't a suggestion. It was the price of admission to the career Norma Jeane desperately wanted. But here's what nobody talks about. Deciding to bleach your hair blonde isn't just a beauty choice when you're Norma Jeane Baker in 1945. It's an act of self-erasure. It's deciding that who you naturally are isn't good enough, isn't valuable enough, isn't marketable enough. It's choosing to become someone else because being yourself means staying invisible. And Norma Jeane, who'd spent her entire childhood feeling invisible, shuffled between foster homes, unwanted by her mother, never belonging anywhere, understood that choice in her bones. She'd rather be a fake somebody than an authentic nobody. She thought about it for days. Looked at herself in the mirror with her brown curls, trying to imagine them platinum blonde. Tried to picture herself as the kind of glamorous blonde that movie stars and models were. It felt like putting on a costume, becoming a character, performing a role. Which was exactly what it was. Norma Jeane was about to audition for the role of her life, playing someone beautiful enough to matter. The night before her salon appointment, Norma Jeane barely slept. She lay in bed thinking about what she was about to do. Not just the physical transformation, but the psychological one. She was choosing to kill Norma Jeane Baker. That girl, the one nobody wanted, the one who couldn't get modeling work, the one who'd spent her childhood being passed between homes like unwanted furniture, was about to cease to exist. And instead of feeling sad about it, Norma Jeane felt relieved. Good riddance to the girl who wasn't enough. Hello to whoever came next. Wait until you hear what happened in that salon. Norma Jeane made the appointment, walked in on a Tuesday afternoon in late 1945, sat in the chair, and told the hairstylist she wanted platinum blonde. Not just blonde, platinum. The whitest, brightest, most attention-grabbing shade possible. She wasn't interested in subtle honey blonde or natural-looking highlights. She wanted transformation so complete that nobody would ever confuse her with the brown-haired girl she'd been. The stylist looked at her brown curls and warned her, this would damage her hair. The bleach was harsh. She'd need to maintain it constantly, bleach the roots every few weeks, probably for the rest of her life. Once you went this blonde, you couldn't easily go back. Your natural hair would grow in looking damaged and strange against the platinum. You were committing to being blonde forever. Norma Jeane said do it anyway. Because what the hairstylist didn't understand was that Norma Jeane wasn't just changing her hair color. She was changing her identity. She was killing the girl nobody wanted and creating someone they couldn't ignore. The permanence wasn't a bug. It was a feature. She didn't want to be able to go back to being Norma Jeane. She wanted that option eliminated completely. The process took 3 hours. First, the stylist had to strip the natural color from her hair using harsh chemicals. Norma Jeane felt the bleach burning her scalp, not painfully, but noticeably. A chemical sensation that felt appropriate somehow, like her identity was being dissolved at the molecular level. The brown color drained away, leaving her hair a strange orangish blonde that had to be toned and bleached again to reach the platinum shade Snively wanted. Between applications, while the chemicals processed, Norma Jeane sat under the dryer and watched other women in the salon. Women getting their hair set in perfect victory roles, women reading magazines about movie stars, women performing femininity in ways that seemed effortless. She studied them, learning, preparing to join their ranks. The smell of the chemicals was overwhelming. Ammonia and peroxide mixed with the perfume other women wore, creating a strange cocktail of transformation. Norma Jeane breathed it in, feeling lightheaded, feeling like she was being baptized into a new religion. The religion of beauty. The religion of performance. The religion that said your authentic self was worthless, but your invented self could be priceless. Norma Jeane sat in that chair and watched herself disappear in the mirror. The brown-haired girl faded. The natural curls were straightened and smoothed. The authentic Norma Jeane was being chemically erased, replaced by someone shinier, blonder, more valuable. And the strangest part was how right it felt. Like she was finally becoming who she was supposed to be, even though that person was completely invented. The hairstylist kept checking with her. "This is very blonde. Are you sure?" "Yes." "This will damage your hair over time?" "Yes." "You'll need to maintain this forever." "Yes." Every warning was met with agreement because Norma Jeane understood something the hairstylist didn't. The damage to her hair was irrelevant compared to the transformation of her life. Who cared if her hair was damaged if it got her out of the factory? Who cared if it required constant maintenance if it made her valuable? 3 hours later, the transformation was complete. The hairstylist turned the chair around so Norma Jeane could see herself in the mirror. And what she saw wasn't Norma Jeane Baker anymore. It was someone else. Someone platinum blonde and glamorous and striking. Someone who looked like she belonged on magazine covers. Someone who looked like a movie star instead of a factory girl. The brown-haired teenager who'd walked in was gone. And Norma Jeane's first reaction was relief. She didn't recognize herself, and that was exactly the point. Recognition would have meant she was still Norma Jeane, but the blonde in the mirror was someone new. Someone without Norma Jeane's history of abandonment and foster homes and invisibility. The blonde could be anyone. The blonde could be someone people wanted. The blonde was valuable in ways Norma Jeane had never been, but there was also something unsettling about it. Norma Jeane looked at that reflection and felt a strange disconnect. Like she was looking at a stranger wearing her face. Like she'd put on a mask so convincing that even she couldn't see underneath it. It was exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. She'd gotten exactly what she wanted, to not look like herself anymore. And now she had to figure out how to be this new person she'd created. She touched her hair tentatively. It felt different. Dry, slightly straw-like from the chemicals. But it looked incredible. The platinum caught the light in the salon, making her seem to glow. The contrast with her skin was dramatic. Her eyes looked bigger, bluer. Her lips looked fuller. Nothing about her face had actually changed, but the blonde hair created an optical illusion that transformed everything. She looked like a different species of pretty. Not girl next door pretty, movie star pretty. She paid the stylist, left a generous tip she couldn't really afford, and walked out onto the Los Angeles street as a blonde for the first time. And immediately she noticed the difference. Men on the street who would have walked past brown-haired Norma Jeane stopped and stared at the platinum blonde. A man in a suit tipped his hat to her. A group of sailors whistled. A woman in a car slowed down to look at her hair. The blonde got attention. The blonde got seen. And Norma Jeane, who'd spent 19 years being invisible, felt the addictive rush of finally mattering. She walked blocks out of her way just to experience it. The stares, the double takes, the way conversations stopped when she passed. This was power. This was currency. This was what Emmeline Snively had meant when she said blondes make more money. It wasn't just about modeling fees. It was about leverage. It was about being seen as valuable by default. It was about walking into a room and immediately being the most interesting person there, not because of anything you'd done, but because of how you looked. Norma Jeane stopped at a diner for coffee, and the waitress was friendlier to her than waitresses had been to brown-haired Norma Jeane. The man at the next table offered to pay for her coffee. Another customer asked if she was in the movies. This was the world blondes inhabited, a world where people were nice to you for no reason, where strangers wanted to give you things, where everyone assumed you were special. Brown-haired Norma Jeane had never experienced this. The blonde was experiencing it in the first hour. Emmeline Snively was thrilled when Norma Jeane showed up at the agency with platinum blonde hair. "Perfect," she said. "Now we can book you." And the jobs started coming immediately. Photographers who'd passed on the brown-haired girl suddenly wanted to shoot the blonde. Magazine editors who'd said no suddenly said yes. The work was constant. And Norma Jeane learned very quickly that Snively had been right. Blondes made more money. The blonde made more money. This new person she'd invented was more valuable than the authentic girl had ever been. But here's the thing nobody prepared her for. Once you erase yourself and create a new identity, you have to maintain that performance constantly. The blonde hair had to be retouched every 3 weeks. The roots couldn't show. The platinum had to stay perfect. Any glimpse of brown hair underneath would shatter the illusion. And maintaining blonde, that light required harsh chemicals, constant damage, professional upkeep. Norma Jeane's hair started to break, started to thin, started to feel like straw. But she kept bleaching it because the alternative was going back to being invisible. The psychological transformation was even more profound than the physical one. Norma Jeane started noticing how differently people treated the blonde. Men looked at her differently. Photographers talked to her differently. Strangers on the street reacted differently. The blonde got attention, got opportunities, got desired. And Norma Jeane, the real girl underneath, became more and more irrelevant. The performance became the reality. The invention became more real than the original. Within weeks, Norma Jeane started to feel like the brown-haired girl had been the fake, and the blonde was the truth, which was psychologically backwards but emotionally accurate. The blonde felt more real because the blonde was more powerful. The blonde could do things brown-haired Norma Jeane couldn't do: get modeling work, attract opportunities, command attention. So maybe the blonde was the real her, and brown-haired Norma Jeane had been the imposter all along. Wait until you hear what happened during her first major photo shoot as a blonde. A photographer who'd seen her brown-haired photos and passed on working with her suddenly called the agency asking to book the new blonde girl. Norma Jeane showed up to his studio and he kept saying how much better she looked blonde, how the platinum hair made her features pop, how she was going to be huge. And Norma Jeane smiled and thanked him, all while thinking, "I'm the same person I was before. The only thing that changed was my hair color." But that small change had transformed her from unbookable to in demand. The shoot went brilliantly. The blonde hair caught the light in ways her brown hair never had. The platinum created contrast with her skin. The camera loved it. The photographer kept saying she was a natural, that she had star quality, that she was going places. And Norma Jeane performed being that person, confident, glamorous, comfortable in front of the camera. But inside she was thinking, this isn't natural. This is a costume. I'm playing a role. The natural girl was dismissed. The fake blonde is what people want. That photo shoot led to more work. Magazine covers. Commercial campaigns. Pin-up photos for soldiers overseas. The blonde was in demand. And with every job, with every photo, with every compliment about her platinum hair, Norma Jeane Baker faded further into the background. The girl she'd been, the brown-haired factory worker, the foster kid, the invisible teenager, was dying. And the blonde performance was becoming her only reality. She started introducing herself as Marilyn instead of Norma Jeane, started creating a whole new personality to match the blonde hair. Marilyn was confident where Norma Jeane had been shy. Marilyn was sexy where Norma Jeane had been innocent. Marilyn was the girl everyone wanted, while Norma Jeane had been the girl nobody chose. The hair color was just the beginning. It was permission to invent everything else too, but there's a cost to killing your authentic self and replacing it with an invention. Norma Jeane started to lose track of who she really was. When she looked in the mirror, she saw the blonde, saw Marilyn, saw the performance. But where was Norma Jeane? Had she actually died in that salon chair? Or was she just buried so deep underneath the platinum hair and the red lipstick and the breathy voice that she couldn't find her way back to the surface? The maintenance became exhausting. Every 3 weeks, back to the salon for a touch-up. The roots couldn't show. The blonde had to stay perfect. And every time they bleached it, Norma Jeane's hair got more damaged. More brittle. More fragile. Her scalp was constantly irritated from the chemicals. She'd sit in that salon chair, feel the burn of the bleach, and remember, this is the price. This is what it costs to be valuable. Let the hair break if it means Marilyn Monroe gets famous. The ritual became meditative in its own way. Sit in the chair, apply the bleach, wait for the chemicals to work, rinse, tone, style, leave as someone shinier than you came in. Every 3 weeks, a reminder that Marilyn Monroe wasn't natural, that she was maintained, that the performance required upkeep, that stopping the bleach treatments would mean going back to being Norma Jeane. And Norma Jeane didn't exist anymore. Couldn't exist. Marilyn had killed her, and here's what's so tragic about this transformation. It worked. Being blonde opened doors that being brunette had kept closed. The platinum hair got her modeling work, which led to acting opportunities, which led to Hollywood contracts, which led to becoming Marilyn Monroe, one of the most famous women in history. The fake worked better than the real ever could have. The performance was more valuable than authenticity. The invention became an icon while the original girl was forgotten. But Norma Jeane never forgot what happened in that salon. Years later, when she was Marilyn Monroe, famous and desired and iconic, she'd still remember sitting in that chair and watching herself disappear. She'd remember the relief of not recognizing herself. She'd remember thinking, I'd rather be a beautiful nobody than an authentic somebody. And she'd wonder if that decision, made by a desperate 19-year-old trying to escape invisibility, had been the best or worst choice of her life. The blonde hair became Marilyn Monroe's signature. When people pictured her, they pictured platinum blonde. The color became so associated with her that decades after her death, Marilyn Monroe blonde is still a thing people request at salons. The invented look outlived the authentic girl by generations. The performance became more real than reality. But maintaining that blonde for 17 years, from 1945 until her death in 1962, took a toll. Marilyn's hair was constantly damaged from the bleaching. By the 1950s, her scalp was so sensitive that the bleach treatments became genuinely painful. She had to use wigs and hairpieces to make it look fuller. She couldn't go more than a few weeks without retouching the roots. The chemicals had permanently altered her hair's texture, and she could never, ever let anyone see her with brown roots showing. That would shatter the illusion. That would remind people that Marilyn Monroe wasn't natural, that she was invented, that there used to be a brown-haired girl named Norma Jeane underneath all that platinum. There's a particular photo from 1945, right after Norma Jeane went blonde for the first time, where you can see the transformation captured in real time. She's looking at the camera with this expression that's half confidence, half terror. Like she's not sure if she's just made the best decision of her life or signed her own death warrant. Like she's thrilled and horrified at the same time. Because she can feel it. Norma Jeane slipping away, being replaced by this shinier version that everyone likes better. The Blue Book modeling agency was ecstatic about the transformation. Emmeline Snively started booking Norma Jeane constantly, and she kept reinforcing the message: the blonde is what's working. The blonde is what people want. Don't ever go back to brown. And Norma Jeane internalized that message completely. Going back to brown would mean going back to being nobody. The blonde was survival. The blonde was success. The blonde was everything. Wait until you hear how this affected her psychology for the rest of her life. Marilyn Monroe spent years in therapy talking about identity, talking about feeling like she didn't know who she really was, talking about the performance versus the authentic self. And her therapists would ask, "Who are you really? Norma Jeane or Marilyn?" And she'd say, "I don't know anymore. I killed Norma Jeane when I was 19. I've been Marilyn for so long that I can't remember who I was before. The blonde isn't just my hair color. It's my identity, and I don't know if I could survive without it." That's the real tragedy of the blonde transformation. It wasn't just about hair color. It was about a girl so desperate to escape invisibility that she erased herself completely. It was about discovering that being fake was more valuable than being real. It was about killing your authentic identity and replacing it with a performance, and then performing so long and so well that you forget there was ever an authentic person underneath. The modeling work led to acting opportunities. Hollywood studios started noticing the platinum blonde who photographed so beautifully. And Norma Jeane realized that the blonde had gotten her further in 1 year than being herself had gotten her in 19. The fake outperformed the real at every turn. So she leaned into it harder. Made the blonde even blonder. Made the performance even more exaggerated. Became more Marilyn and less Norma Jeane with every passing month. By 1946, when she signed her first movie contract with 20th Century Fox, Norma Jeane Baker existed only on her birth certificate. Everyone knew her as the platinum blonde model who was about to become a movie star. Nobody asked about the brown-haired factory girl she used to be. Nobody wanted to know about Norma Jeane. They wanted Marilyn. And Marilyn required platinum blonde hair, red lipstick, and the performance of being exactly what they wanted her to be. The hair damage got worse over the years. By the 1950s, Marilyn's hair was so damaged from constant bleaching that it would break off. She had to be extremely careful with styling, used oils and treatments constantly, slept on silk pillowcases to minimize friction, had hairstylists who specialized in working with damaged hair. But she never stopped bleaching it because the platinum blonde was non-negotiable. That was Marilyn Monroe. Brown hair was Norma Jeane Baker. And Norma Jeane couldn't exist if Marilyn was going to survive. There's a quote from Marilyn later in life where she said, "I want to be a blonde all my life. It's part of who I am now." And that statement is so revealing because it acknowledges that the blonde isn't natural. It's chosen, maintained, performed. But it's also become so fundamental to her identity that she can't imagine being anything else. The invention has completely replaced the original. What's particularly tragic is that Marilyn was actually beautiful as a brunette. The photos of brown-haired Norma Jeane show a lovely, natural girl with gentle features and soft curls. She didn't need to bleach her hair to be pretty. But she needed to bleach her hair to be valuable. She needed to bleach her hair to be seen. And in Hollywood in the 1940s, being naturally beautiful wasn't enough. You had to be the right kind of beautiful. And the right kind was blonde. The decision Norma Jeane made in that salon in 1945 echoed through the rest of her life. Every 3 weeks, back to the salon. Every bleach treatment, more damage. Every root touch-up, another reminder that Marilyn Monroe wasn't natural, was invented, was maintained through chemistry and performance. The blonde wasn't who she was. It was who she'd chosen to become because who she was hadn't been enough. Friends from her childhood who saw her after she became famous often said the same thing. She doesn't look like Norma Jeane anymore. And they were right. The platinum blonde hair, the makeup, the styled waves, none of it resembled the brown-haired girl they'd known. Marilyn had succeeded in her goal. She'd erased Norma Jeane so completely that even people who'd known the original girl couldn't find her in the performance. And here's what makes this story so devastating. It worked. The blonde made her famous. The blonde made her an icon. The blonde made her Marilyn Monroe. But it also meant she could never be Norma Jeane again. The girl who walked into that salon in 1945 died there. And the woman who walked out spent the rest of her life maintaining the performance of being someone else, never quite sure if killing her authentic self to become valuable had been worth it. When Marilyn Monroe died in 1962, her hair was platinum blonde. Even in death, the performance continued. Even in death, Norma Jeane stayed buried underneath all that bleach, and millions of people around the world mourned Marilyn Monroe, the platinum blonde icon. But almost nobody mourned Norma Jeane Baker, the brown-haired girl who'd been erased in a salon chair 17 years earlier. She'd died long before Marilyn did. She'd just died invisibly, unmourned, forgotten, replaced by something shinier, blonder, more valuable. The blonde transformation wasn't just about changing hair color. It was about a desperate girl learning that she had to destroy herself to survive. It was about discovering that authenticity was worthless and performance was everything. It was about choosing to become a beautiful illusion rather than remaining an invisible reality. And it was about paying for that choice, in damaged hair and lost identity and constant performance, for the rest of her life. When you look at photos of Marilyn Monroe now, you're looking at an invention. The platinum blonde hair, the red lips, the breathy voice, the sexy walk, all of it was created, maintained, performed. And underneath it all, buried so deep that even she couldn't find her way back, was a brown-haired girl named Norma Jeane, who once sat in a salon chair and chose to die so that someone more valuable could be born. That's the real story of the blonde transformation. Not the glamorous Hollywood tale of a girl becoming a star, but the tragic story of a girl killing herself to survive and discovering that being dead was the only way to be alive. Which city are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever changed something fundamental about yourself to be accepted? Have you killed one version of yourself to survive in the world? Would you trade authenticity for value? What parts of yourself have you erased to become who you think you should be? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Boulevard of Monroe for more stories about transformation, identity, the price of fame, and the cost of becoming someone else. Hit the notification bell so you never miss our next story.